From a very young age, I learned quite early on what it was that people considered hot.
I am Kanji Tatsumi, and I enjoy naked men.
Oh, yeah.
And this was me. Back in middle school, I remember so distinctly there's this one time where me and my peers were like, discussing what each other's best qualities were. And when asked to describe what my best quality was, they'd say I was smart, funny, nice. And that stayed with me for a long time. Ever since then, the idea that I was someone who did not have any appealing physical features was something that I pretty much accepted as fact. I would never try to look good during photos. I would always make a goofy face whenever someone pushed a camera towards my direction because it would alleviate the impossible pressure of looking good on camera. My goofy face was a shield for my lack of prettiness. But you might be surprised to hear that during high school, I actually really wasn't all that bothered by my lack of physical attractiveness. I didn't really care all that much about my appearance or the fact that I was quote unquote ugly, like at all. And that's because I grew up in a very small high school where I was basically the only obviously gay kid in the school, or at least that's what it felt like at the time. And since all of my peers were so obviously straight, I never had the impetus to really care about my looks, because I didn't have a chance to get with any of the boys anyways. They're all pining for the girl, so I assumed the role as that sassy gay no-nonsense friend in all of their romance arcs. And my aloofness towards my physical appearance didn't change until I went into university, because suddenly I had a chance. Suddenly, I was surrounded by other gays, and suddenly I was struck with the feeling that looks were the only thing that mattered. And that realization was pretty devastating to my 18-year-old self. We all know how physical the gay world is. I mean, how the main way gay people find each other is through an app called Grindr, of all things, right? This picture you're seeing was the very first picture I uploaded onto my Grindr profile. And you wouldn't believe how long it took for me to take this photo. I think I spent an hour or two alone just deciding whether or not to wear a tank top, and like the other hour or half an hour deciding if I looked better with glasses or not. Ultimately, I decided with the glasses because I thought that maybe the big bulky black glasses actually helped me look better because it hid a little bit of my face. And I learned quite quickly that I wasn't seen as desirable in my local community, or rather that's how it felt like at the time. And to give you an example, there's this one person I remember having a crush on during my university school years. We would talk and end up becoming friends, and eventually I would tell him how I felt and was rejected, which is fine, of course. Then time would pass and eventually I started to like another person, but then I would find out that new person I was starting to like was now dating that previous crush that I had. And then this pattern would rinse and repeat itself again and again and again and again for years. So it wasn't just that I was getting rejected, but like all of those people who were rejecting me were like going around with each other, which is, quite ostracizing. And this is not saying this to like villainize them or like to blame them for not liking me back or anything like that. This is more so to illustrate how alone I felt in that community. Like, basically, all of the evidence was pointing towards the fact that I was one ugly little gremlin. It didn't help that Vancouver was a notoriously small community. Like, our dating pool is like really small. And everyone knows each other in the gay community, which only just exacerbated how alone and ugly these rejections made me feel. Like, during my time here, the only people who seemed to hit me up were like 10 or 20 years older than me, and it was very demoralizing that I couldn't seem to find anyone my age who was interested in me in the same way I was interested in them. And on the off chance that I did find someone who was like interested in me and vice versa, I would come off way too strong because that fear of like not being able to find anyone else was so strong that even when I tried to play it cool, I still became this clingy little gremlin that just pushed them away. It was basically a self-fulfilling prophecy, really. I became ugly due to my obsessiveness over finding someone and wanting to feel validation. And this need for validation was really the driving force for me to start going to the gym. I wanted to be hot. I would obsess over the idea of finally being attractive, or rather just feeling attractive. It got to the point where getting or receiving any sort of attention was how I would build my self-esteem. Like, I became the guy who would actually care about Instagram likes. Like, if a really hot local gay guy saw and liked my photo, I would remember feeling so over the moon about it. Like, I would keep track to see if they saw my stories and if they followed me, and I would constantly keep track as to whether or not other gay people were were still following me by a weekly basis. Like, it got to the point where I had this whole album on my phone that was just screenshots of boys and texts and Grindr profiles and Grindr conversations. Just anytime anyone showed interest towards me, or if I went on a date with someone, or if I slept with someone I considered hot, I would put their photo and text conversations in that album on my phone. It was like a personal trophy room, but on my phone. And it was just filled with torso and face pics and conversations, and it was just the most vain thing imaginable. But this is what I used to feel attractive. This is what made me feel worthy. These messages from these other boys was what gave me self-worth, and I wish I could go back in time and tell my younger self to just snap out of it, because obviously this whole getting validation thing from boys thing that I was doing, it just wasn't sustainable. And I think the turning point was sometime in 2020 or 2021, I forget when or where, but okay, well, the TLDR version of this story was basically the same story I told you before, where I would like a guy and then have that guy reject me and then see that guy go for another person with whom I previously liked, except this time there were a lot of details involved, but the most important thing was it all ended and culminated into me putting myself into a situation where I was sexually taken advantage of, and it was my darkest moment. It's a story for another time, but believe me when I tell you that it was an incredibly stupid situation that I put myself in. And it was extremely lucky that I made it out alive, because had I been with someone with more malicious intentions, then my life could have very well have ended up on one of those true crime murder documentary stories that we see all the time on YouTube. It was so easy for my life to have ended in that situation, and it was all because of some hurt feelings over a few boys. And I think that was the moment where I really realized that I needed help. If it weren't for my friends, for my roommates, I think I would have stayed in that deep dark well for a much longer time. It sounds so painfully obvious now, but I should have appreciated and valued their love and friendship way more than I valued the attention of strangers. But at the time, I placed such a high importance over being perceived as attractive that I totally neglected what was already in front of me. It's easy to see how stupid that is, but when you're in the moment, it's so easy to forget what it is you already have. I should have known that being valued as a friend, as a good person, is so much more fulfilling than any sort of male attention. That being said, I will admit that having male attention still does feel good. I mean, who doesn't want to be or feel hot? But my point is more that attention should not have been the thing that filled my soul and my self-esteem. I know it sounds easy and cliche, right? Oh, just accept yourself for who you are. But obviously, we all know that self-acceptance isn't something you can just do. And I think the thing I learned after all these years is that self-acceptance is the same as any other activity. It takes practice. Like, obviously, you can't just wake up and think, oh, wow, I don't feel ugly anymore because I accept myself. Yeah, obviously, that's not going to work. Like, for me, at this point in time, I spent a whole lifetime thinking and believing and acting as though I was ugly. I was looking at myself negatively and thinking negatively. Like, my default brain function was to be negative. And that wasn't something I was going to be able to unlearn in a day. It was going to take time and practice. I mean, there's a reason why everyone talks about meditations and affirmations and journaling and practicing gratitude, like all of those things when it comes to improving yourself and self-development. And that's because it works. It just takes time and practice. I came into this world with so much love that I was ready and willing to shower onto others. I mean, for example, when this comes to my dogs, I care for them so much, you know, I would worry about their health, their diet, their happiness, their comfort. But how often did I treat my own body and mental health with the same kind of care? I would choose late night gaming sessions over sleeping early. I know now that being happy is a matter of choice, and I choose to be happy.
Please.